Hey guys, thank you so much for dancing on over here to the Awesome Padron show. Just yesterday, and you saw this morning as well.
Yeah, I've seen it twice now.
Yeah, I've only seen it once, but we saw Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. The first one, to me, personally, I think, and it took me a while to come to this decision, but I do think Into the Spider-Verse is honestly my favorite Spider-Man movie. Mm-hmm. I think before that it was Spider-Man 2, and whenever I first saw Into the Spider-Verse, I'm like, it's still Spider-Man 2 is still my favorite movie, but my favorite Spider-Man movie. After watching it, we watched it a second time, watched it a few times, and I think we watched some videos over it. I started realizing that Into the Spider-Verse is actually better. I think that Spider-Man 2 didn't really have that opportunity to be as good as Into the Spider-Verse, but I do think Into the Spider-Verse is the best Spider-Man movie. Mm-hmm. I absolutely loved it. I think the writing was fantastic in that. So going into this, I was really excited about it. And I will say that there is a lot of great things about this movie. The animation obviously is really good.
Right, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
That's one thing that's great about the first one, was it really revolutionized animation.
Yeah.
Because now you have the Puss in Boots movie, the new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie that's coming out this year.
Yeah.
Has that kind of style.
Yeah.
So it really was a game changer for animated movies.
Mm-hmm. And I think what was really cool about this movie is there's a lot more characters, because it goes across tons of different Spider-Verses, right? Mm-hmm. And so it kind of goes into their world as well. And so not all the animation is the same, exactly the same. Yeah. Some of the animation is a little bit different when they go into, and some of the animation is a lot different. Mm-hmm. And so there was just so many different animations in this movie. But then the main animation is fantastic. I love it so much.
I especially loved Spider-Gwen's universe, mm-hmm. the art style with hers, because it was almost like a mood ring. Yeah. To where it changed according to how she was feeling. Yeah. And just the colors in general were just gorgeous.
Yeah. There's even a part whenever it was a really dramatic part, and if you look at the walls, you can see the walls almost water or paint falling, running down the walls almost, Mm-hmm. And so there was just so much work put in the art of this movie, and I like I said, I just love the art style and going on from the first one. I think the story was really interesting. There's a lot of story elements, a lot of story beats that were really interesting.
Right, exactly.
At the very least.
Yeah, and especially with the villain, which I won't go into too many spoilers until we get to the spoiler section, but I really liked what they did with the villain. It wasn't just completely random villain. I also do like what they did with him, because he starts off as kind of goofy, but just over time he kind of builds, kind of snowballs into a bigger character.
Yeah, exactly. And going into that, and what that really contributes to is the fact that this movie, it did a really good job at feeling like a necessary sequel. Mm-hmm. It doesn't just feel like there was the first movie and then they're oh, it made a lot of money, let's make another one. Mm-hmm. And it just starts from scratch almost. Mm-hmm. It really does feel like a continuation of the first one. A lot of things that happen in this movie happen because of the first one. And there's just a lot of really interesting things that they add in this one that could possibly make you look a little differently at the first one. And overall, this movie is just really fun. I have seen some people say that they like it even more than the first one, and I can imagine that has to do with how fun it is, because this movie has so many, and you've seen from the trailers, so many different Spider-Man in it. And I think I was worried that with all these different Spider-Man in it, it would be completely off balance. It would just feel completely off. I was kind of worried about that. I was worried that it would have been bad, and they wouldn't be able to balance all of these Spider-Men. But I will say they definitely give time to only the ones that they need to give time to. The rest of them are just kind of there to show you that there is a Spider-Verse, mm-hmm. And so I did think they did a good job with that balance. And overall, there's a lot of things in this movie that they just put so much effort into. In ways they might even put more effort than in the first one in certain aspects of this movie. That being said, while I did say I have seen a lot of people say that this one is better than the first one, I can't necessarily agree with that. I think the first one was so wonderfully focused. It was a movie where, from the trailers and the idea of the movie, that it felt like it would be a lot more all over the place. Mm-hmm. but they knew exactly where to focus. The focus of the movie was on Miles and him trying to figure out the kind of Spider-Man he needed to be. Did he need to be the Spider-Man that was already existed, or did he need to be his own? It was him learning who he needed to be as Spider-Man, the kind of person he needed to be, right? Mm-hmm. And everything was focused on that, right? It was all focused on his growth as a character. I think this movie lost a lot of that focus. I do understand that it was hard to. There probably wasn't. The first one had a lot more opportunity to have that focus. Mm-hmm. This movie right here was very. I don't want to say unfocused, because it was it definitely knows what it wanted to do, and it did that, and it had its own focus. But overall, I think the writing was a little weaker than the first. A decent amount weaker than the first one.
Yeah, I definitely wholeheartedly agree, because I definitely think that the first one was better than this one. But it's kind of hard for me to even say how I truly feel about this movie, because one of the things that I noticed about this movie was it really truly did feel like half a movie. Mm-hmm. It felt like just the first half of a movie. And I know that they announced a long time ago that it was going to be part one of a 2-part series. But I still feel like it, because with a movie like Infinity War, that ended on a huge cliffhanger. Yeah. One of the biggest cliffhangers in all of movies, probably. Yet it still felt like it had a beginning, middle, and end. This movie, honestly, if I were to try to tell you what the plot of this movie was, or what this movie was about, it'd be kind of hard, because the whole movie was pretty much just to set up the next movie. Pretty much, it was all set up. Yeah. Which I'm not necessarily saying it was bad. It wasn't a bad movie. It's hard to analyze it. Yeah. Because I don't have the full movie. So once the next movie comes out, maybe I can say that the 2 movies put together are better than the first one. But it's hard for me to say much about this one, just because it's pretty much just a first half of one movie.
It's weird, because there's so much that actually happens in this movie, but it never felt like it actually got to the point.
Yeah, because it's 2.5 hours. The movie's 2.5 hours, but it feels like it just stops at the midpoint. Like they're building up to what the movie's actually leading to, and then it just stops right there, right when the story actually starts to start. Mm-hmm. The movie ends. Yeah. So it's like, okay, well, now I gotta wait another year or 2. Yeah. Hopefully not 3 or 4. Yeah. To see where the story goes.
Yeah, we are in the middle of a writer's strike. So
yeah. Oh my gosh, I didn't even think about that, man. Yeah, that's kind of scary.
And I understand that there's a cliffhanger, right? Mm-hmm. There's nothing wrong with cliffhanger. We don't have them too often, but there's nothing wrong with cliffhangers. There's nothing wrong with not finishing out the story. That's fine. And even though this movie it does really well at being a continuation of the first one, it doesn't just. My problem isn't just the fact that it has a cliffhanger, the fact that it doesn't finish off the story. It just feels like this movie was really written and relied too much on the fact that there is going to be a third one.
It kind of presents situations, but it doesn't feel like a complete movie, because it doesn't really resolve very many of them. And not to compare it to other movies, but also there's Empire Strikes Back, Star Wars. That ends on kind of a cliffhanger too, not necessarily a traditional kind of cliffhanger, but it still ends on a cliffhanger. But it still had a point to the movie. Yeah, you still had Luke going to train his friends trying to escape from the Empire. Then at the end, he goes and confronts Vader before he's ready. He loses. Mm-hmm. His friends are able to escape from the Empire. They're able to gather back up. And there's still an ending. There's still a conclusion to the movie. This movie didn't really have a conclusion because the conclusion is going to be in the next movie.
Yeah. And it's not, and it's not, like I said, it's not that big of a deal for me about the end of the movie, because honestly, I forgot that it was gonna be a 2-part. So whenever it became a cliffhanger, it threw me off. I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. But it's just like we keep saying, the whole movie itself, it's a lot of stuff happening, but it doesn't necessarily feel like it's building up to anything. It's just building up so that we have this extra information, so that for the next movie. Mm-hmm. And And that being said, like I do feel like I did like this movie. I do think it's a pretty good movie.
Yeah,
I just don't think it's great. I don't think it's really anywhere near as good as the first one. You know,
it also reminds me of like whenever like a movie is based on a book and it's like a series of books, and the last book is split into two movies. And the part one of those two movies just feels like all set up. It doesn't feel like an actual movie.
Yeah, that's a good.
Just feel like they're kind of stretching it out.
That's a good way to describe it.
That's what this movie felt like.
And they do set up a lot of interesting plot points throughout the movie. Like I said, they make it to where you kind of see things differently. Then in the first one, if you rewatch it, they set up a lot of interesting things there. It's just that the movie's plot as a whole, it's hard for me. I could probably summarize it for you, but I couldn't give you like a brief like plot summary.
Thesis, please.
It's hard for me to find the actual plot of this movie, but I could kind of just tell you what happens. But like to tell you what's the point of this movie, it's so that there can be a third one.
Right. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
and I do just want to stress that just because we're bringing this up doesn't mean that we think it's a bad movie.
Yeah.
It's just hard to judge it without seeing the second half of it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the main reason why I want to bring up this point, is just because it's hard to get my full feelings until I see what the conclusion of it is.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, it's still a movie, so we have to judge it based on the fact that this is a movie.
Exactly.
You know, like it's still one movie.
Yeah, for sure.
There might be a second part of it, but I'm going to judge it based off of what it is now.
Yeah, because it is a self-contained movie.
Yeah.
I can't judge it just because it's a two-parter.
Yeah, whether or not the first one, this third one,
I can't give it a pass.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, whether or not the third one's fantastic, I still would probably feel the same way about the second one. But we do think it's good.
Yeah,
I did like it. I do think it's pretty good. It's just I don't think it's as good as the first one. I will say, however, I do think it's more fun than the first one, and I could see why people might like. I could see why some people might think it's better than the first one just because it's a little more fun, because there's a lot more Spider-Man, there's a lot more things going on. But in terms of writing and how well done the writing is, I think that the first one is a lot more focused. It's a lot tighter of a script.
Yeah, and I also feel like a lot of the jokes landed a lot better in the first one than it did in this one.
Yeah.
I felt like it was as funny.
Yeah, exactly.
Even though it still had a lot of jokes in it, it wasn't as funny.
Yeah. And so even though that this one is more fun than the first one, when you combine all the factors that make a movie, I think the first one definitely is much more rewatchable. And
I also do want to make a big mention about the music, because I really love just the whole music that's in it, whether it's the original soundtrack or the kind of hip-hop-y style, or even the kind of the rock kind of style that's in the Gwen universe. I just really love everything. Every song that was in it, I just loved.
We're going to go ahead and get into spoilers, so if you haven't seen this movie, and you don't want any spoilers, you can go and hop to this time to get to our grades.
The first spoilery thing that I want to bring up is the story with Miguel O'Hara. His backstory and his motivation was really interesting when they first brought it up, whenever he was first telling it to Miles. But I feel like by the end of the movie, they started to make it too black and white. When they could have left it in a gray area, because it started off in a gray area. Like whether Miles should let his father die instead of risking the entire universe. Because Miguel even said that he tried to do something similar to what Miles is trying to do, and he destroyed a complete universe. Like the complete universe died because of what he did. So it's like understandable what he's trying to tell Miles and try to get Miles to do. But like by the end of the movie, they make Miguel like completely in the wrong, and Miles completely in the right, pretty much.
Yeah, and which he's not. Like, like I wouldn't even say that either of them really in the wrong. Yeah, it is a very gray area, because it's someone still has to die, but is it really? If he doesn't die, then that whole universe could probably just go away.
Yeah, and they could have like left it to where maybe the universe one time, because they do bring up that they've been able to save some universes, but a lot of times they haven't been lucky enough to save the universe after the canon event or whatever it's called is interrupted. And I also know that they're probably going to have an arc with Miguel, which I do feel, because they brought up his backstory and all that, so I feel like they're not going to completely ignore that in the next movie.
Yeah.
But so I feel like they're still going to give him an arc, but still I feel like they could have ended this movie on a more gray note than a black and white.
Yeah, especially since it was like everybody started getting on Miles's team about it. And I don't feel as if that was a right choice to have everybody get on Miles's team. Like you said, they practically made Miguel like a sub villain or something, like an extra little villain in this movie when he wasn't. You know, it was much more gray area, especially the fact, and I know that they don't want to go this deep into writing with movies because nobody cares to get this deep into writing, right? Think about it. Miles is 15 years old in this movie. 15 years old is not known to be the age of great decision making.
Right, yeah. And they even made like this whole like deal about don't call me a kid, but it's like you're kind of making I don't want to say a kid decision because it is his dad he's trying to save, but like this movie, like I keep saying, that it just tried to make it so black and white. Like I don't know, they tried to like ham fist it to the audience. That Miles is in the right. Miguel is in the wrong. And it's like it's not.
Exactly.
It's a whole universe at stake here. And it's not like it's like something that Miguel theorized. It's something that he himself lived through. He caused a whole universe to die because of something similar to what Miles is doing. So he knows firsthand that it could happen. And it very well did happen in the past to him.
Hey guys, it's Zach here. A point that I thought of just while I was editing is that I can see some people make the argument that the decision that Miles makes in this movie is similar to the one that Tom Holland's Peter makes in No Way Home. But the difference between those two is that for one, Peter's decision wouldn't automatically cause the destruction of the universe. It was more of a ticking time bomb. Cure the villains and send them back to their own universe before all the other multiversal villains came to their universe and break it. If Miles saves his dad, he's potentially automatically dooming the entire universe, and his dad is going to die anyways. And two, Doctor Strange was very new to the multiverse, and he even admitted that he didn't fully understand how it worked.
Because frankly, the multiverse is a concept about which we know frighteningly little.
Miguel was a lot more experienced in the multiverse and even experienced firsthand what a decision like what Miles is making could do. And I'm certainly not saying it's an easy decision. I mean, that's what makes the ending of the PS4 Spider-Man game from Insomniac so tough and so great. And I'm definitely not saying it's the right decision either. I just think the main issue I had was just the fact that they made it such a black and white situation, and so many people started to side against Miguel as if an entire universe wasn't at stake. And at the end of the day, this is just a part one of a two-parter. So when the next movie comes out, and if they address all of this, then y'all can just come back to this video and laugh at us for this little rant that we had. And to go back to the villain that I was talking about in the non-spoiler section, I just love how they tied it into the first movie about how he was the person that Miles hit with a bagel in the first movie. And how he kind of feels like he is Miles' nemesis, pretty much. They almost kind of did it, an Electro from Amazing Spider-Man 2, but a lot better. But I just love how they tied into that, and how they made it to where the fact that Miles' spider was from another universe is like the first time that's ever happened. And so that makes Miles so much more special than a lot of the other Spider-Man, because he's the only one who's been bitten by a spider from another universe. So he's like the original, like Miguel said, he's the original. What do they call it?
The original anomaly. Yeah, and it was just it was cool because like throughout the movie, it's why they didn't want him because he was wanting to join, and you kind of think that maybe they just, because I think she's was it Gwen said that there's not enough spots or something like that on the team, but it makes sense because of the fact that since he's there, he was never supposed to be there because he's never supposed to be Spider-Man in the first place. So anywhere he goes, anything could happen, you know. Which honestly, I think if there's another big thing that I really do love about this movie is how down packed they have how their multiverse works.
Right.
You know?
And just a random side note, I just love the idea that Lego Spider-Man is one of the best Spider-Man.
Oh, yeah.
Miguel, it's Peter. We got an anomaly.
Thank you, Peter. You're one of our best.
And honestly, what I think would be really cool is if the Spot, since he knows so much about the multiverse because he worked in the Collider, is if his plan is at the very least now to show Miles his father dying so that Miles would save his father, ultimately destroying the universe.
And I do want to say that we wanted to have the Burger King Red Whopper that they have for this movie, but we went, and our Burger King by our house is like terrible. They're so slow. They never have a lot of things, and they're out of the Spider-Verse burger.
Yeah, they literally said we don't have those anymore. I don't know if they like that. If they, I mean, like they never.
Yeah, they're probably just sitting there and they didn't want to make it.
It's literally, it was on the menu. Like it was on the menu there. You know?
Right.
We're gonna say that Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse is 75% awesome. Well, guys, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Also, comment and let us know what you thought about Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, and also let us know which one you thought was better between Into the Spider-Verse and Across the Spider-Verse.
And don't forget to follow us on social media. We have Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, all at The Awesome Padron Show, and we both have individual TikToks, which we'll put down below.
Yeah, and as always, thank you so much for watching, and you will see us later.